All right, hopefully we can avoid some technical glitches. I'm Bob Davis, Canon Explorer of Light, and we're here to go live into a deep dive about the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. I've had the camera a little bit over 3 weeks. It'll be a month on September 28th. And I've photographed everything and anything that I could think of. A lot of wildlife. I've used the pre-capture, the focus. I've done event photography, off-camera flash, portraits, you name it, I've done it. This is going to be a long one, so grab your favorite beverage, jump in with any comments or questions, drop them in the feed. I'll do my best to answer them to the best of my ability. I am a Canon Explorer of Light at full disclosure, but Canon is not paying me to do this. I became a Canon Explorer of Light because I've used Canon products my entire career, and they liked what I was creating, and they liked my ability to be able to explain and digest that and share that information with you. So that's what I'm going to do. I am a huge fan of Canon. But with that said, there really isn't a bad camera out there today. I strongly suggest don't chase gear, but use the gear that is working for you. And if there's something missing in that feature, then look for that feature that's going to work for you. There really isn't a bad camera on the market today. So with that being said, let's dive into the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. Let's just start off with some of the obvious changes that they've done. Is it's a little bit bigger. The ergonomics are improved. It fits my hand much better than it was. Button placement, the AF on is in a great space. The battery grip has been changed so it fits better ergonomically. The joystick is right in the right place. Yes, you do need new batteries. It's the LPE6P. But your older batteries will work. It's just you don't get all the advanced features, some of the video codecs, pre-capture, the highest possible frame rate capture, those kind of things you don't get because those just take more power. In my experience, photographing with and without the battery grip, the batteries last, to me, the same amount of time as the original R5 and the original LPE6 batteries. But you do have to realize there's a whole lot more power consumption with this camera. The screen, the viewfinder, the eye tracking, the pre-capture, all those things require more power. So the more you're using your review screen, if you have it so it's always on, all those sets of things are going to draw more power. If you're using pre-capture more, it's going to draw more power. If you're going for 8K video, it's going to draw more power. Now there is a vent on the bottom of the camera. I haven't had any issues with weather with that vent, but it does help to just get some airflow through it. I don't have the fan battery grip. I just went with the battery grip. That would work best for me with the vertical controls and the vertical joystick. If I was to do video more often, I would definitely get the battery grip that has the cooling fan in it. All right, let's see, who's up? Anybody out there? Nikki, how are you doing? You picked yours up at ProCam, and what do you think? Are you liking it? Sarin, Jason, how are you? Good to see you out here. Yeah, there is some changes. I'm going to drop in the feed, which I already did, a link to the video where I went through all the menu features, functions, dials, and customization that I do. You might want to try that as a starting point. These cameras are incredibly customizable in the ability to do what you want. The one factor that I wish we could do, and I'm going to plug this one in so that you could actually see the menus that I see when we talk about this. And I'm going to switch this camera on, and we'll go over here and I'll pull up the menu with you. Is I put things in my menu that I access frequently. I wish we could program a button for the pre-capture, but we can't. So there are two solutions that you can do. Is you could put it into your my menu. Now pre-capture continuous shooting, what this does is when you enable it, is as you depress the shutter partway down, it starts recording 1 to 2 seconds in the background, I believe at 15 frames per second. It's been phenomenal for timing birds in flight, anything where it's critical peak action, sports, anything like that, because your reaction time might be a millisecond slow. And with the great high-speed frame rate and capture capability at full 14-bit raw files is just phenomenal. But this isn't something you always want to have active because it does eat up a lot of frames. So I put it in my menu so I can enable it and disable it. Or you could go into the custom modes, C1, C2, C3, and program them. And that could be a solution until there is a firmware workaround, until there is a firmware update, which I'm hoping I put it in for my feature response, is that we could program a button, let's say the depth of field preview button. And if I tap that, pre-capture is active. I tap it again, it deactivates it, instead of actually having to go to my menu. Ken, how are you doing? Did you get a 5D Mark II yet? So let's just talk about some highlights really quick. The EOS 5D Mark II, to me, if you're a serious enthusiast, especially for birds or sports photography, the stickiness of the autofocus, the acquisition of the autofocus, the speed and pre-capture, all those sets of things, full electronic shutter at 14-bit, are all worth the upgrade to me. Remember, these are just tools to bring out your creativity and your vision. Don't chase the gear. If you have a camera that's working fine for you and you don't feel like these advanced features are something for you, then don't do it. But if you're looking for that next edge, if you're looking for that next advantage, if you're looking for something to take your craft to the next level, then yes, this is a tool that will definitely enable that. Let me pull up the camera again really quick here. One of the other things I do is I enable the AF on button to cycle through my autofocus features. I'm gonna grab a lens and put it on, and you'll be able to see what I mean by that is some people I've read on other forums and things have said that they feel that the focus is too jumpy. So there's two ways around that, meaning if you're in the full field, so let's pull up the camera here. So if you're in the full field of view, right, see I could lock my focus points. So these are locked in, but as I hit the AF on button, I can cycle through them, okay? Now see, in this one, the autofocus is picking an object outside of where I have directed the autofocus to. So this is where the autofocus is going to take over and continue to focus outside of where you told it to focus. So if that's continually happening to you, go and lock it in. So you have the capability of actually locking in. Now it will not track outside of where I tell the camera to focus. So remember, autofocus works off of brightness and contrast, no matter what, with face detection, eye detection, tracking, all of that. So this is darker in this area, these tonalities, less contrast. This speaker is highly reflective, more highlights. The focus is going to jump and grab there. But if I don't want it jumping around, I could take my focus point and lock it right here, and it's going to stay locked. Now remember, if I let the camera choose it all, well then it's going to go for the brightest spot. See how it jumped from the darkness to the brightest? So that's not a default. That's exactly how autofocus is always worked, no matter how intelligent we try and make it be. Bring up your live histogram so we can get back to my selection. So if you're watching in this area right here, if you could see my cursor over the AF button, when you see the focus point with the 3 slash marks, that means it's in motion, meaning it's active tracking. As I push the AF on button, you can see where it says lock. So you have those options really quickly at your disposal. And you could program this button as a half touch to focus and a full touch to fully change and cycle through your focus point presets. So this could come in handy. Oh, but while I'm on focus, let me pull up the focus menu again. There's another tip here in your focus menus. So I'm actually going to go back to the AF. So we're cycling across the menus at the top. So in your AF, they have now, in the cases, here we go, give you two, auto, full auto, which you can tweak a little bit, or manual. Now I've changed manual several times. I've been playing with this, especially with continuous pre-capture active. So what I do for continuous pre-capture is, it depends what you want it to do. If we want it to track the bird as it jumps off of a branch, well then I've sped this up. I'll go this way. We'll speed up responsiveness and we'll speed up tracking. Now, as that bird jumps off its perch, it's going to continually track it. Now, if it's jumping around too much for you, and let's say you're trying to do portraits, well, then I'd say slow it down. And again, you could program a C1, C2, C3 to do exactly this. So that's the only time I've found it where it's really could be jumpy or where it could be very helpful. So let's check some of the questions here. Jason, you love the custom mode. That's awesome. It's fancy. It's fun. Yeah, it's just a tool, and you got to program it to how you want it to react to be intuitive for you. All right, so I've said enough. So let's get into some of the meat of the stuff here. And I'm going to pull up, clear off my desktop here. I got too much stuff on it. So some features and photos and highlights of things that I've photographed. Just getting all these panels off. There we go. And I'm using Photo Mechanic. Photo Mechanic is a great browser. Lightroom is fully integrated now, and it will decode all the raw files, so I haven't had any issues with Lightroom at all. So here's a bunch of files that I've already gone through. I've shot in this test folder. We got 6,200 files, and it covers many different things, right? Speed, pre-capture, low light, extremely low light. So this is phenomenal. So this scene sequence here of the deer was actually in auto for my case. And it allowed, what I did is I set it in the whole area AF with active tracking. So the deer were pretty cool and quiet at first, but now watch this, how sticky it is. This is really low flat light. There isn't much contrast here at all. In fact, it's 12,800 ISO because I wanted the shutter speed, and I was using the 100 to 500 lens. So I had an aperture 6.3 wide open, 800th of a second. But what's phenomenal is A, how it acquired the focus in this low flat light. It didn't hunt and peck. But B is the stickiness. So check this out. It's on the doe, sees it. The doe decides to change direction. And I did not have pre-capture active for this. So this is just the high-speed frame rate, which is 30 frames per second, full electronic shutter. And every frame, this one I brightened up in post, this is the actual raw file, every frame is sharp. So the deer got out of the frame faster than I could pan and keep with it. But the legs are still sharp. So to me, this is a big leap forward over the R5 original. It's even a step forward on the R3. I found the stickiness, the acquisition, the tracking, all of it is even better than the current R3. So incredible. So I'm going to jump to some of my favorite photos and keep popping questions in if you have any. Here's a series of pre-capture. So pre-capture is active, and I'll actually take you through my viewfinder with me. I have a challenge with these small finches. The smaller the bird, the harder they are to photograph, the faster the shutter speed you need to capture them because they just move so quickly. And the reaction is far greater than mine, meaning how fast they're going to perch. They don't really telegraph the way a large bird does. He's sitting there getting the seeds out of the milkweed, then the next second he's looking right at me, and the next second he's getting ready to pounce or to fledge right off of the branch. And what I get usually is the portrait and an empty branch. So this was my first experience with pre-capture. I wanted to have a high shutter speed, so notice 4,000th of a second, 1600 ISO, and this is a clean, beautiful file. So I'm going to let it render. There you go. So these are the actual raw files, unprocessed in photomechanic. You can see every striation in detail in the beak and in the feathers at 1600 ISO. Now again, I chose the ISO that's going to give me the proper exposure for the shutter speed I want. The smaller the bird, the faster shutter speed you need. So here you go, pre-capture is active, and every frame of this bird is captured, and it is sharp, right? 4,000th of a second is also helping this to be sharp. Faster the shutter speed, the smaller the bird, the more you want it to go. So 15 frames per second, I'm sorry. Yeah, 30 frames per second, 2 seconds in the background during pre-capture. The minute you fully press down the shutter, it records all of those other images to the memory card. So let me pull up my Ninja here. And these are actual recordings through the lens. So I'm using a Ninja 5 Plus that is actually taking the feed out of the HDMI port and recording exactly what I see through my viewfinder. So you can see I'm playing with the focus, meaning I'm selecting the whole area AF, the spot, the expanded area, and then the locked. And it's showing you how it can track or stay within the actual focus parameters that I'm telling the camera to look at. What's great about digital and mirrorless is what you see is what you get. You could pull up a live histogram so you could actually see the exposures and tones and colors that you want. It's extremely helpful and useful. So you could see it's actually staying on the bird's head outside of the single point focus mark. That's because I have the active tracking enabled on this. So I don't have pre-capture on because I'll pull up one of the videos where you'll have a pre-capture icon here. And as you're pressing it down, you see it recording. And it's actually just putting images into the buffer of the camera. The camera has a much larger internal memory buffer than the R5 original because of the pre-capture. And then the minute you fully depress the shutter, it records those images to the memory card. Now, I really haven't had any memory buffer issues. So these are just the still photographs I'm cycling through, pulling up the information about it, which you see right live when you're in the field. Zooming in, great focus, great detail. This is great light, so the camera better perform well here. Here's another one. Now let's see if this one, I'm in silent mode because you could tell the speaker here was on. So that's letting you know that the camera is actually silent shutter. I was relatively close to this green heron and I didn't want to spook it. But this is great to be able to say, oh, okay, I could have the active tracking on, and even though I'm putting the single point focus mark on the body of the bird, it's still jumping to the eye. Now that's where that acceleration deceleration comes into play, is how quickly do you want it to pop off of that focus mark and to track the subject or not. These were in the auto case mode, which it did really well. And I'm purposely moving the camera around and trying to fool it. But it's so sticky and it's so fast in acquiring the bird, it's going right back to the eye every time. So this technology is amazing. It's another leap forward that I would equate it to is when we went from a DSLR to mirrorless to now this is like second gen mirrorless stuff. And I know Canon is maybe late to the game with the pre-capture. Olympus has it, Nikon has it, Sony has it, but it's my first experience with it, and it truly is phenomenal and allowing me to capture images that I was never able to time and to capture before. So let me cycle through this again. Here's another one. And you could, remember I got the pre-capture on, looking for the video with the icon of pre-capture. Oh, the egret. So this egret here was fishing, and we'll see in the video, see the clock running here, and you see the numbers running, pop, 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 pop. What that is doing is every 2 seconds, it's buffering those images, and it doesn't actually record them permanently until I fully press down the shutter. So let me get out of this field, and I'll take you right to that sequence. Is it in here? No, it's here. Here we go. So here's the sequence, and this is what's so phenomenal with the egret. You know, you're watching it, you can tell it's going to start to change its position. So the wings come out, the detail that you get in these nuanced images is just allowing you to be creative in picking what you determine to be the decisive moment, right? And it just holds the focus. It's so sticky, so phenomenal. So let's go to where the egret actually captured a fish. And I love these nuanced moments. It's almost like I'm going to catch him doing the ballet. So let's see how many frames there are from seeing the body and the wing flutter until the landing, and he folds in his wings, is how many frames? So 61 frames. So that's really just a couple seconds. So let's watch that sequence. What? Lynn's got a question. How did I set it to silent mode? Sure, I'll pull that up in a second. So let's just watch this. So again, 4,000th of a second, because I want the pictures ultra sharp and crisp. And here we go. He takes off. I'm keeping him framed and land. But the nuances of the wing beats is just phenomenal. So here's where he's going to catch a fish. Here we go. Is this the big fish? You see when he pulls it up. There was one, yes. So this entire sequence, he captured this fish, good sized fish, but now let's go in 100%. And then I'll answer Lynn's question. So that's the EF 600mm f4 lens with the EF 1.4 extender version 3 with the EF to RF adapter. No loss in speed, no loss in quality. So let me plug the R5 back in, and I'll show Lynn. She asked, how do we get to silent mode? Now, again, anything that I know that I'm going to use in terms of activating features right away, I put into my menu. So I'm going to pull up the menu. We go to my menu. So date, time, display, do I want it to be exposure simulation or not, fine-tuning, white balance, things of that nature, crop, full, or the 1.6 crop factor, which I love doing on the R5 Mark II because you have enough meat to the file to actually do in-camera cropping. Here's our pre-continuous shooting. Here's your silent shutter function. So when you go, I have it accessible really quickly so I could turn it on and off. So now the camera is completely silent. Now, I've used it for people or wildlife. You can see you have auto, vehicles, and none. I mostly do people, animals, and I do use none if I'm photographing objects, like the moon the other night that was rising. I didn't want the focus to be confused looking for a person or looking for an animal face, so I turned it off, meaning none. So then it's just going to go back to old time autofocus. So those are the features that I have active for me. And that's how we activate your silent shutter. Now with the R5 Mark II, you can assign a volume level to things. And the eye tracking is phenomenal. So eye detection is auto, or we could program it for left eye, right eye for portrait situations, but this means subject eye detection. Eye control is for me, where it actually tracks my eye. So I have my right eye calibrated without glasses. I only use my glasses for reading and seeing up close. For photographing, I normally don't wear my glasses, but I've calibrated the camera, and the eye control works really, really well. And most of the time I use this for portraits, for speakers, presenters, things of that nature. But for wildlife, I just find that the tracking in and of itself is fast enough, and that I really don't need to be looking around the frame, right? Because as you move your eye and look around the frame, the focus icon is tracking your eye, and it is accurately tracking where you're looking. So if I look over here and then I look back to the bird, the R5 Mark II is far more reactive and quicker than the R3, and it does jump really quickly. So that's something for you to play with and see what works well and see what you like. Let's see. Just checking the feed. Any more questions? No? All right. So let me go back to sharing my desktop, and we'll get to people. Can you see my desktop? I closed a window. What window did I close? All right. So, yep, there we go. There's the window. I'm in it. Okay. So now let's just go back to the overall, and let me know if there's anything that you want to see. Let's jump down. These are all bright lit situations. I showed you the deer. The deer was great. Here's a coyote. I love coyotes. I think they're beautiful. They're great creatures. We have a bunch of urban wildlife that's around us that really we can coexist with. So again, 12,800 ISO. There have been some people commenting on forums and Facebook and YouTubers that say that there is more noise with the R5 Mark II versus the R5. I will say this, the larger the file size, both R5, R5 Mark II, at higher ISOs inherently has more noise than the R3. The R3 is a 24 megapixel file. The lower the megapixel file, the cleaner the files are at higher ISOs. But if you expose for the shadows, develop for the highlights, it's the same level of pleasing texture and noise as the previous R5 to me. I don't find it, discouraging at all. And again, you can use software to clean up the noise. Canon software, Lightroom, or I happen to love Topaz Photo AI. But what I was doing was just letting, again, full AF face active tracking. So I'm letting the entire, I'm trusting, I should say, more than ever, whole area AF than I ever did with the R3 and the R5 to lock on and capture the face. So this is a little bit of a challenging situation, meaning the coyote's face is in flatter, darker light. There's more highlight on the tree, and there's more highlights in the background. But the camera actually did really, really well staying on the coyote's face. Only a couple times did it not actively track onto the coyote. And when you see frames that are slightly out of focus, that's because I'm going faster than it can buffer and cache the photograph. Because remember, these are larger files and newer files than the original R5. But she's a really good coyote. She's in our neighborhood. Beautiful, beautiful dog. So this is a processed file, meaning I finished it, edited it, toned it. This is 8,000 ISO, and this file is sharp and clean. There you go. I mean, come on. Who's going to complain about that? Not me, right? Don't be afraid of the ISO. Sarin, you hit one with your car last year. You got to be careful out there. I know you're a dog lover, and I know you didn't do that intentionally. We just saw a fox last night, Dawn and I. We were out bringing the dogs back from the dog park after dark, and we saw a fox. These are grab shots of the ducks, and the reason they're in here is because as fast as I could bring my camera to the eye and frame this duck mallard, female mallard, moving in motion, which they are fast in flight, it acquired it like that, locked on focus, and kept it in focus, even flying at me. I mean, yeah. Distracting backgrounds. More than ever is the autofocus sticky. And these are in whole area AF with active tracking enabled, meaning I'm not locking it into a square or any of those zones. I'm allowing the camera to do it. And it is fully locking on and focusing. Let me pull this over. It's 100% zoom. There we go. Look at that killdeer. I mean, they move fast. It's just kind of feels like cheating. Oh, here's a great series. So I was at a boardwalk that goes through this marsh in our neck of the woods, and there was a red-tailed hawk trying to hunt and capture some green heron, and there was about 6 heron in this wetlands, and then they were all sounding the alarm, and they were all kind of flying decoy to drive this red-tailed hawk nuts. I stayed with this red-tailed hawk for about an hour, and it was unsuccessful. But another reason I want to show you these is, again, this is whole area active track. Again, the highlights in the background, to me, I would think, with the previous R5, would in whole area AF, it would jump to something in the background. The hawk is kind of in flat, dull light, no highlight on its face, just the highlight on the back. But the camera worked extremely well. Once it acquired the focus and locked on, it stayed with it. So see how sticky it is? And this was all with pre-capture as well. So the timing, you know, I've never been that good at timing the hawk. As they jump off, I've missed this shot so often. I get this one and then an empty branch. But now I have this whole wonderful sequence, and you could really see the detail in the feathers, the talons, the light streaming through. It's just crazy, crazy cool. Remember, it's just a tool, but look at this. Now here's the situation where I changed it up and I slowed down. Remember, let me pull up the camera again. I fiddle with this stuff because I'm trying to find the perfect scenario, and there isn't always a perfect scenario. So what I did is I'll get over to the AF area, menus, and subject to detect was animals. And what I did is I went to manual case, and I went in and I slowed these down. So it stayed locked on, and acceleration, deceleration, I had at 0. So what that does is the tracking sensitivity, meaning since the red-tailed hawk is flying behind the brush and through the trees and back around, I didn't want the camera to react and say, oh, I can't find it, and start focusing on something else, looking for something else to focus on. So it was more sticky. So as the hawk emerged in the, you know, I had all the other frames. So here, I'll show you the entire sequence. These are just the selections. So here's the entire sequence, and you could see as the hawk flew through the frame, flew behind the brush, it did not focus on the foreground. It was waiting for it, grabbed it in between, right? Held onto it through this terrible light, and then as it came into a clearing, it stayed sticky onto the hawk until it landed on its next perch. Now, if you ever tried it, this is with the 100 to 500 RF with an RF 1.4 extender to keep a hawk in a distracting background within the frame. It's tough. It really is tough. They move quickly. So this is 700 millimeters. So that's fully at the end range of the 100 to 500 with the 1.4 extender, which makes it effectively a 700 millimeter lens. But through this entire sequence, every frame is in focus. Incredible. Let me just check the feed. Yep. Any questions? Yep. No questions. All right, I'm going to go back to the selections. instead of going through them all. We'll pull up some people. I've got some people in here. So that's the hawk. Oh, and we got a used pre-capture for this green heron. He was popping around, and then he caught a frog. And this was pre-capture. So I've got the whole sequence of him, they, whatever you prefer to choose, capturing a frog, right? Incredible. I'm getting more keepers and cool moments. Like, look at that. You could see the linear eyelid that all birds have that they use as a protective layer over their eye when they're catching prey so that they don't damage their eye. So we got the entire sequence. Oh, here's some people, right? So again, nice light. This is cheating. I mean, really, it's beautiful light. This is lit. So I'm going to talk about the off-camera flash, third-party flashes, things of that nature. The newer cameras, let me get back to just me. All of the newer Canon cameras have what we call a hybrid shoe. So that hybrid shoe, or a multi-function hot shoe, I'm going to take you over here to the top down, and hopefully we could see this better. Grab, here we go. Oh, good. All right. So I brought these up for comparison. This is the R5 Mark II. This is the R3. I have to tell you, in all honesty, I still favor the R3 for the size, weight, and the ergonomics. And my ultimate favorite feature is the AF on with a multi-touch button. You just can't beat that. So once the R1 comes out, I don't know, that might come back to being my everyday camera. I just love the responsiveness of this button, ergonomics, and the way it fits. So talking about the hot shoe. So here's the Canon shoe cover on the R3. It just slips right off, and I've lost a few of these. So the reason you want to keep this protective cover in is it's for weatherproofing and also to protect the fine gold contacts. Let's see, can I get that in focus? Yep, it is. So you could see in here those contacts. So the newer Canon accessories communicate with those gold contacts. They allow you things like more control over the speed lights, microphones. There's an external monitor connector for this. So those you want to protect. So if you're going to use any third-party flashes, you want to make sure that they seat and connect properly without damaging those gold connectors. Now with the Pro Photos, I've also noticed that sometimes if you're pretty active and you're swinging the camera around, taking it off your shoulder, putting it back on your shoulder, or you're on the dance floor, and you just have the Pro Photo speed light in the hot shoe, sometimes it loses connection with those full 5 pins, and you start getting inaccurate flash exposure readings. So I believe that's because the tolerances have been changed and the A10 doesn't seat fully tight enough. But if you use the ADE1, let's get this focused. This is the accessory shoe, which is for the R5, all the newer cameras. I'm sorry, R5 Mark II, R3. Here you can actually see there's no more pins. All the communication is done through these gold contacts. Now, if you're going to use older flashes, this is the traditional hot shoe that was in the camera. By placing this in the shoe of the newer cameras, R5 Mark II, R3, locking it in place, it has a weather seal here, and now we're back to the traditional style hot shoe with the same tolerances as before. So I suggest if you're using Westcott, ProPhoto, Godox, anything else, that you use one of these ADE1s twofold. One, to get back to the original tolerances and make sure you have a good seated connection with all 5 pins. And 2, to make sure you do not damage these gold contacts. Because at some point in the future, if you jam something in there and damage those pins, you're not going to be able to use any other Canon accessories that you might want to use. So CR3, the R5 Mark II, again, it's bigger, it's taller. It actually feels a little bit heavier, even with the internal battery of the R3. Viewfinder is much bigger because it has a better eye control, which is phenomenal. But the hot shoe cover, they now have a lock on it, which protects it, so it just doesn't slide off, right? Once it's in, it's locked in place and it won't come off, because I've had these things rub against my body and you lose them. So what you do is you actually push down the lock button, that unlocks it, and then you slide it, right? It is a little bit challenging, which you want it to be, so we don't lose these suckers. There we go. And once the lock is disengaged, you have access to the hot shoe. All right. Checking to see if we have any more questions in the feed. Yeah, no more questions? Okay, keep rolling. So let's pop over here. People. Again, you switch the focus parameters from animals to people. Like I said before, I'm enjoying this more than ever. So I've been using, there we go, menu. And I'm going to go to my menu. I have been using the full AF on area. So let's do Q right here. So whole area AF with active tracking. Now you see down below here, these are the locked on, as I said before. So if I wanted to lock them onto them, if there was a distracting background, or let's say I'm on the dance floor, then I might use the lock feature so it's not jumping around and looking at faces. I did use the face lock where I programmed, and I'll show you that in a second. These were with the ProPhoto controller in the hot shoe, and then I was using a ProPhoto B1 off camera with a MagMod extra large light modifier for all of these. So this was from an engagement session the other day. This was a bit tricky, right? All glass building, not getting the flash in the building in the background. So it took a little bit of finessing, and the reason I lit it is because there was no light on the subject's faces. So we wanted to give them a little bit of kiss of light, so it looked like there was a little bit of sunlight shining in on them, and we didn't have any dark circles in their eyes. We want to bring their eyes to life. Same thing here. We had golden hour sunset light coming down, very harsh, very directional from one side, and we just wanted that pop of light here. In terms of TTL working, the ProPhotos are spot on. They're working great. The Canon EL1s, of course, are phenomenal. Canon to Canon is always going to be the best. It actually takes the TTL reading twofold, both from the active focus point, so meaning if you have face, head, eye detection, the ETTL, electronic through the lens, flash exposure is done right off of that active focus point, so that would be the face. And then it also takes into account distance. So that's why you can use rapid fire function, and you could come in close or back away, and you're going to get consistency, where you don't have that added feature with third-party flashes. Black and white, love the moment. Again, just a kiss of light from the ProPhoto B1. So that's 500 watt-second head. And just as the sun was going down, the street lights came on. This is at Northwestern University campus right at the lakefront. I took the B1 and placed it down below them just to give them a little separation light. And then we were letting the ambient light give us a little bit of fill. So fun, fun, fun. These are just some exposure bracketed images that I have not put together yet. So underexposing, correct exposure, overexposing, so that we could create a higher dynamic range photograph. Went out, photographed the moon. I'm going to actually stitch these verticals together to make a large panorama. And then here we go, the moon. The blood harvest moon, super moon we had the other day. So this is the 200 to 800 millimeter lens. full frame 800, and then I engaged the 1.6 internal crop, and there we go. So that gave us more magnification on the lens. Oh no, I'm sorry, I did not. That was the 2x. No, that's the 2x because you can see it's 1600. I added the RF 2x. Again, great detail. Beautiful. Tracked everything just amazing. I did do some shots where I was using the 1.6 crop. But if you have the teleconverters, I always believe that would be better than actually cropping into the frame. So here is the 2x with the 1.6 crop factor in camera. So what would be our effective focal length? So let's see, so it's 1600 millimeters times 1.6 crop factor. So this is a 2560 millimeter f/18 effective focal length. Pretty cool, great detail. And this is still the raw file, nothing's been processed. So they'll just turn out that much better when we actually process them and clean them up. Did the moon rising, the city, again, just bracketing my exposure using the R3. I did some shots with the R3 and the R5 Mark II so that I could compare them. They're both same ISOs, same exposures, so I'll give you that information later. So let's go back to the viewfinder recording. For the people, so here's, again, whole area AF through the viewfinder. No reason to have pre-capture on, no reason to be photographing at a high frame rate capture. So this is just single frame advance. And you can see it goes right to the face. It's just so sticky and so fast acquiring the subject. It's just next level for me. And having true 14-bit RAW with electronic shutter is just phenomenal. So you have all the information, where the R5 original, it would go down to either 10 or 12-bit, I don't recall, but 10 or 12-bit if you were using any electronic shutter. So I would use all mechanical shutter when I was doing portraits, especially with flash, to get the most bang for the buck. So this is electronic first curtain, which allows me to get a flash sync speed of 2/50th of a second if I need it, and I'm shooting at aperture 2. These are all TTL. Let me just move this. That's me with the camera around my neck, and here we go. And you'll see how quickly it acquires the subjects. Oh, where are we at? There it is, right there. So a blue box means that we have servo focus, where the camera is continually focusing. If it was a green box, that would mean it is single point, single frame focus. Since we've gone mirrorless, I really haven't used single focus. I've never had a need to have the focus assist beam in any light situation I've been in. It's just done phenomenal. Very fun. So here's setting up the camera, so people to detect, right? I did do testing between mechanical shutter and electronic shutter with flash. So between mechanical and electronic first curtain, I had no differences in exposures or quality while using the ProPhoto Flash system. So it worked phenomenal. In this outdoor situation, I'm using a big light, meaning 500 watt seconds, because I want the power, versus using speed lights. More efficient. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my desktop, see if we have any other questions. Nothing else I'm thinking of that I could show. Oh, birds in flight acquisition. Let's do that. Take you through the viewfinder again. All right. There we go. So I have to say, I wish Canon, when you would put the external viewfinder on top and you plug it in with the HDMI cable, that you'd still be able to look through the viewfinder, shoot, and record. Because otherwise, with this external monitor, I have to use it like a giant iPhone like this. And I'm not very good at being steady, and I'm not very good at keeping the subject within the frame, as you will see. It's very hard to keep them framed. There we go. Going up to the sky. The circle in the center actually means that I'm in spot meter. And you could see how quickly and how small this eagle was. It just found it, grabbed it, stayed locked on, and then I would lose it. Because that's me moving the camera to try and keep it within the frame. And if I come too far off of it, well, then it doesn't know what to do, and that's user error. So if I could get Canon to make a firmware update to where I could still look through the viewfinder and record what I'm seeing for educational purposes, because other camera manufacturers have this capability, it would be great to have that function. Another great reason to use an external monitor is if I want to record video while shooting still pictures. Yes, the EOS R5 will do both, but what it's actually doing is taking a frame grab, albeit a pretty good frame grab, from the video. So as you depress the shutter while it's shooting 4K or 8K video, it's actually taking a still image capture of that video. So if you're shooting with a slower shutter speed, so it's more cinematic, then whatever still picture you're looking to capture, if it's a bird in flight, something that's moving fast, it's going to be blurry. So this way, I can record video off camera through the HDMI feed and still use full frame, high speed still capture images. So here we go. Here's the coyote. Again, you can see how quickly it acquires, and this is great light. Electronic shutter. Silent shutter is on. I just activated it. It goes right to the eye. Boom. It's crazy cool. Dare I say cheating? But the tool, remember, the tool is only as good as the person using it. You have to tell it what to do. It's learning this technology and exploiting it to get the best possible capture that you want to get and create. The camera itself, remember, autofocus is still autofocus. If it's not focusing properly on the subject that you want, that's why you have all these other features to use a locked focus point, to go to a single precision focus point, all of those sets of things, which will still allow you to capture the image you want. But if you give up your creativity and if you give up your knowledge and technical skills to the camera, it's only going to be as good as it can be with the situation in front of the lens. So again, don't give everything up to the technology. Remember, it's only as good as you are using it. All right. That's about it. All I could think of right now. Shared the people, the nighttime photos, people photos, animal, video recordings, the sequences, shared sequences with you. Let me pull up this last sequence and then I'll check for questions and wrap it up. Kingfishers have kind of been my nemesis bird. And I've posted this. Here's 62 frames, pre-capture, of course, I was using at H+, which is 30 frames per second, full raw files. So 1200 millimeter lens, it's sharp as can be. So let's get the Kingfisher in here, right? Very cool, very sharp. All right. The entire sequence, pre-capture. See, normally I'd get the portrait and then he's gone. That's so fast. And then it stays with him, stays with him, stays focused. There we go. Keeps in focus. He's going behind some branches and trees. Still in focus. Still in focus. 62 frames, even with a distracting background. Thank you, Canon. I am completely thrilled and pleased with what I've been getting so far. So if you have any questions, drop them in the feed. Anything you want to see, any tests you want me to try and run with it, share with you, drop them in the feed. Otherwise, I hope to see you in the wild. Take care.